Yeah, with Clarion Call, we kind of knew that we wanted to make a record that was a little shorter. Sibylline Age is our debut, and it's a little over an hour long. It's like 61 minutes long, I think, and it has, an 8 minute long instrumental piece on it, which I'm super proud of. I still think that's like one of the best compositions or songs I've ever had a hand in writing. I love Last Full Measure. That's the instrumental track on Sibylline. And then this 12-minute long title track, just kind of sprawling piece with all these different movements and sections. And that was cool. We were really proud of that. And we were really proud of the way that that album developed. But we got to a point with writing, and Martin and we kind of sat down after, I would say it was probably like when we were in the process of mixing the Sibylline Age. So this is now maybe spring of 2022. And we have this thing whenever we're finishing up a project, finishing up an album, finishing up songs, whatever, while we're waiting, we just kind of like I always say the riff faucet turns on. So in that time period where we were finishing up the production process on that record, we just started writing, and we had some ideas that were left over and some other songs that we thought were really cool, and we just developed them. And before we knew it, I think we had like maybe 5 songs, right, going into 2023, and the remaining ideas just kind of organically happened. I think Martin came up with Petrified. I came up with what would become Falconer's Cry after we kind of developed it and collaborated on it a lot more. And, it was really cool because we found, okay, we've got 8 songs. Do we keep going? We don't have a big epic track on it, some 15-minute long piece or something. We've got an instrumental track, which I think is kind of going to be a thing for us on our albums, right? But it felt right. It felt like this is a good place to stop, and this is a good record, and this is a good statement, So it wasn't one of those things where we set out to like have the second album done within 2 years. We just felt really strongly about the material that we had, and it just felt right. It was like, yeah, let's bring this one in and let's record it, and not belabor it and not add a bunch more stuff, right? We probably could have added another 2 or 3 songs to it, or written some big piece and put it on there, but we really just wanted to do kind of like a classic metal record, 8 tracks, like a lot of the classic records that we love. It's about 50 minutes long, 51 minutes, so it's a little bit shorter than the first record was, and just really try to make it flow well and just be really tight and focus on really great songs and really great melodies while still kind of pushing some of those other elements we really enjoyed right from the first record. So yeah, it was overall, it was a really cool process to kind of conceptualize what we wanted to do. And I feel like, had the album title fairly early on in mind, and the rest of the guys seemed like they liked it. And then that kind of drew from that, not only the art from our artist, Mark Erskine, who just totally crushed it. I mean, what an amazing piece. It's just so colorful and kind of the exact opposite of what the Sibylline cover was, which was equally great, but very kind of apocalyptic and dark, just did such a great job. But then that kind of informed the rest of it, right? It informed the lyrical approach, informed, the sequencing and everything else like that. So I think all in all, it's its own beast. It's a much different record than Sibylline, but I think you can still kind of see the through line if you know us and you spend any matter of time with that first record with Sibylline as well. I think Clarion is kind of a natural evolution of the band and kind of what we do or what we strive to do. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, about just kind of the sound in general. That was something that we really paid a lot of attention to this go around, and kind of determined or went through the process of determining like what we want the band to sound like, and what sonic space we occupy. Are we just kind of like retro throwback sort of sound where it's all more kind of the old school, like warmer production? Is it going to be more modern? Is it kind of a mix, right? Or are we meeting it somewhere in the middle? Like, what's the best way to represent the sound of the band. So we paid a lot of attention to that and really tried to do our best to kind of split the difference, right? Because I think after Sibylline, we really realized like we want to take the music, I think, in the future, and certainly we've started doing that on Clarion Call in kind of a more modern direction, and not so much modern in terms of, the songwriting or those elements, but just to bring in different influences and elements and to be open to that, and not just be completely chasing this bygone sound, right? Certainly huge influence on all of us, and we love all those 80s records, and I love the production, and just the sound of it. I'm super proud of Sibylline Age and the production on that. It sounds incredible. But, at the end of the day, I think we really wanted to take what we loved about the production on that first record, and it also factors into the recording process too, and kind of the way we did things, but then also utilize some of, where things have evolved and where things have developed, right, in the last 40 years since that kind of heyday era that I think we initially formed the band around, right? So the other thing is, too, it was very big and important for us that on the record, we want it to be a reflection of what we actually can do, right? So the way we recorded it, like there's 2 rhythm tracks of me, usually on the left, 2 rhythm tracks of Martin on the right. A lot of the times when you're in the studio and you're recording, one guitarist, for example, might record both rhythm tracks. And I think when you do that, you do get a consistency, because it's always easier to double yourself than to double someone else. So I think maybe that would make it even tighter, but you sacrifice, I think, some personality. And also, I love the fact that what you're hearing on the record is a really good representation of what you're going to get when you come see us live. We've really done our best to hone that in as best we can, to where there's really not smoke and mirrors going on, just in terms of want to play it the best we can and play it as tight as we possibly can, but we're all perfectionists in our own right. So we're practicing the heck out of this stuff, trying to get it to that level, and not just kind of say, oh yeah, well, we pulled it off for the studio, but we're not going to be able to do it live, whether it's a riff or a solo or a challenging section or a harmony part or whatever. So put a lot of effort into that. So that's great that you picked up on that, and hopefully folks appreciate it, just trying to do our own thing in that space. And it's never going to be perfect, but I think you always strive to improve, and I would strive to even do more on the next one, right? And continue to head in that direction that we've kind of set for ourselves. So I'm really proud of how it's going so far. So influences. Martin and I kind of formed the band around this mix of wanting to do kind of like Bay Area thrash meets US power metal meets some elements of progressive metal. I would say more like 90s progressive metal. We always kind of call that the golden era. Lots of great bands like Dream Theater and Symphony X and Fate's Warning were putting out some really just top-notch stuff, and that, I think, influenced Martin and I a ton. So, those elements, but then also Martin and I are huge fans of all the Shrapnel Records artists, Cacophony, Racer X, Paul Gilbert, Jason Becker, Marty Friedman, even, Yngwie stuff, Vinnie Moore, Tony McAlpine, players like that. And then just a lot of classic heavy metal, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all the bands kind of that we, I think, as metal fans all share in common too. So if I had to draw it back for me, it's always comes back to kind of those seminal 80s thrash bands. It always comes back to Megadeth, Metallica, Overkill, Testament, Exodus, Heathen is a huge one. Forbidden. I know Martin really kind of got me in Vicious Rumors was another big example, like Crimson Glory. I'm trying to think of a few others off the top of my head. Just, bands like that kind of had that muscular sound, but it also was not afraid to be melodic and not afraid to be epic and not afraid to kind of go outside the box with some of the arrangements or the playing, really kind of pushing rhythmically what could be done, or really cool solos and harmonies, and just more kind of a widescreen version of thrash. So that's kind of really what I think I brought into it. And then Martin really got me into a ton of bands. So like Liege Lord's another one we're huge fans of, and then even some, not a ton, but some like Euro power metal influence as well. Martin's gotten me into a ton of bands, kind of that early Blind Guardian thing. That's a big influence as well, I think. Time, What Is Time, those sorts of things, like I hadn't really been exposed to a ton, and he helped me navigate in that space and say, hey, check this out, I think you'll like this, because he knew kind of what I was bringing to it and what sound that I really liked. So those are just kind of the directions I think we go down. We've certainly brought in influences from other styles, and like I said, on Clarion Call, more kind of progressive rock influence. There's a lot more keyboards. That's not to say it's rocky, but there's certainly elements that we've kind of drawn from that, because we're all fans of Yes and Gentle Giant and Jethro Tull and bands like that. At least I am. And that informed a lot of the music that then would go on and influence us, like Dream Theater and Symphony X. Kansas, I know, was a huge influence on Symphony X. So we can't really get away from that. I feel like with Martin and I, that's kind of in our DNA. So when we sit down and we write, or we're talking about the concept of a song or the album, or what are we trying to go after, I feel like that's always kind of at the back of our minds. It's just something that I think we enjoy, music that is a little bit more widescreen and kind of has that element to it. And I think that's true in rock, it's true in metal, it's certainly true in a lot of the bands that I mentioned. But I think that informs the way that we kind of put songs together and just the sound we want to hear. Because ultimately we started the band because we kind of wanted to make music that we weren't really hearing in the modern scene. And I feel like that's what's kind of driven us to collaborate and kind of do what we've done. So, and it works, or it has worked. It's really easy for Martin and I to put songs together. So I feel like we share enough in common in the Venn diagram that we're able to do that. So that's really cool. So I think for me, expectations of the record, I mean, a band our size, we're a smaller band. I mean, obviously, right, there's a million bands out there. I think we're just doing our best to kind of carve out our niche in the overall scene, right? I think my expectations are just like anything, it's a building process. So you put out the first record, you're a new band, you hope people listen to it, you hope people latch onto it and find something they like with it, and then stick with the band and follow us, and are patiently awaiting the next release, right? So I think that's the big thing for me is, and we're already seeing it in the kind of pre-release kind of promo cycle here we're doing for Clarion Call. We've already seen more engagement, we've seen more listeners, so we're kind of building from where we left off with Sibylline, our first record, and just building off of that. So that's really cool to see. It's not like we disappeared for a long period of time. Those 2 years between Sibylline releasing and Clarion, we were very active, playing shows, playing fests, recording, pretty much almost, less than a year, started recording less than a year after Sibylline came out. So, tried to stay active with it and tried to stay kind of in the, not spotlight, I don't know if that's the right word, but try to just not go extended periods of time where you're not doing anything, right? And you're not out there. So I think we're doing well with that. The other thing for me, in terms of just the reception to it, I hope people kind of understand what we're going for. Really for us, Sibylline, I've said it before, Sibylline was very much a distillation of these sounds that we wanted to pursue, right? But we were still kind of getting our feet under us as a band, and we're all friends and we've known each other for a really long time. But when it comes to being musicians and creative, individuals, and kind of navigating that creative space together, you have to figure it out. You got to figure out what the rhythm is and kind of how things ebb and flow and what people's strengths are, and weaknesses and everything else like that. So I think sibling was a good opportunity to do that. And I think on a Clarion Call, we realized some avenues we wanted to go more down. This has, more keyboards, and there's kind of more of a focus just in general on, I wouldn't say shorter songs per se, because I don't think we necessarily did that on purpose, but we wanted to just make it really cohesive and really tight, but then also add in some more kind of progressive flourishes and some different vocal harmonies and keyboards and some different stylistic things. The instrumental track Falconer's Cry, which ends the record, has lots of more kind of progressive rock influenced elements, right? Which isn't something we did a ton of on Sibling Age. So kind of just, embracing some different directions and some different influences, and really using that as a catalyst to continue forming our own sound. So hopefully people realize that and kind of realize the direction we're going. And just like they did for Sibling Age, they enjoy it hopefully, and then they're along for the ride, and they're waiting for either us to come play their town or to release the next one, which is we're already working on. So, that we'll definitely make it to a third record, which is cool. So keep evolving. Yeah, so the underground. It seems like there's a lot of regional scenes that, have existed, obviously always, but they continue to exist, and they continue to, foster really good bands doing really interesting things. I mean, there's a big resurgence of traditional metal right now. There's a big resurgence of kind of the 90s death metal sort of influence bands and sound, right? That's been kind of a big thing the last few years here too. So there's tons of those bands cropping up. Lots of cool stuff in the thrash realm, lots of cool stuff in power metal realm, more technical death metal, those sorts of things. So I think, it's a mix of those styles and genres kind of being cyclical and coming back, right, in some cases, but then also the regional scenes propping those bands up. And you see a lot of the mainstream bands and all these tours, right, they kind of have continued to exist and be a thing since COVID era. It was kind of a weird few years there, but more or less everything came back, and there's obviously all sorts of conversations around touring costs and all that, right, because it's expensive to do. But that being said, there's also lots of smaller tour packages out there with these bands that are, not huge, but they're trying to get out there and get the music out there and kind of do what we're all trying to do, right? Bring their music to new people. And it seems like attendance is up at shows just in general. I try to attend a lot of shows in the Chicagoland area where I'm from, whether they be smaller bands that I really like that are coming through, bigger, bands, more middle of the road, kind of middle-sized bands, I guess you could say. Always try to go out and support, really kind of enjoy that. So, I mean, it is underground, and I think that's kind of a thing with metal, right? We kind of wear that on our sleeves too, because I think in a lot of regards, metal is kind of it's not a middle finger, but I suppose it is too, but it's kind of a rebellion, right, against the mainstream too. So I think there's a lot of great stuff in the underground. The only downside is you have to find it, and with the internet and technology and Spotify and streaming and Bandcamp and all these other things, there's more avenues than ever to find it, but there's also more bands out there than ever. So it's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes. But I think overall, it's a good thing. It's definitely good to have that ability to connect and network. And I think all of those aforementioned technologies kind of simultaneously made the world smaller but bigger at the same time. So it's just navigating that, right, and figuring it out just like anything. So I think we're open to any opportunities that come our way. I know the big thing for me with anything musical, any musical projects that I'm in, it's always a victory to be able to travel and play the music and bring the music to new crowds. New audiences, different folks around the world or wherever that might be your biggest fan. They just don't know you exist yet. So I think for all of us, we're open to anything that comes our way. We're trying to kind of continue to break out of our little Midwest bubble here in the Midwest U.S. where we're from. we've been getting a few states over and playing some fests and doing, shows where and when we can. So I think we're more than open to hopefully some more opportunities in the U.S. There's lots of cool fests and regional fests that have kind of popped up in the last 4 or 5 years. So hopefully we'll get the opportunity to play more of those. And if the opportunity comes to play Europe, I think it would be a great fit. I'd love to get over there. So as I said, if we get that opportunity or get that call, you better believe we'll make it happen as long as it makes sense for us to do so. So definitely.